There's something uniquely powerful about people who grew up in the 1970s, and psychology helps explain why. If you were raised in that era, your brain formed during a rare moment in human history, a mix of total freedom and real responsibility that simply doesn't exist anymore. And here's the interesting part. Many people from the 70s look at today's world and smile, not out of judgment, but understanding, because they lived through something the rest of us never will. A childhood so open, so unstructured, that decades later they still say things like, "I didn't realize how good we had it," or "I'd go back in a heartbeat." They joke about it now, drinking from garden hoses, roaming until dark, being half wild and loving it. But what actually made that time so different? And more importantly, what did it do to your brain? The first difference is something psychologists call self-guided problem solving. And it usually started with one warning every 70s kid remembers. Go find something to do. Because if you said you were bored, chores magically appeared. So you learned fast, solve it yourself. Research on unstructured childhood shows that kids who created their own fun developed stronger executive function and creativity. Your days weren't scheduled, no constant supervision, no entertainment handed to you. So you built your own world. Books, bikes, woods, forts, imagination. You didn't wait for purpose. You created it from nothing. And that explains your creativity, but it doesn't explain why you stay calm when everything falls apart. That comes from the next trait, adaptive risk awareness. You climbed trees that were probably too tall. You rode bikes without helmets. You experimented, failed, got hurt, and survived. Every scraped knee taught your nervous system an important lesson, what real danger feels like and what manageable risk looks like. Studies show that children exposed to physical risk during play grow up with lower anxiety and better threat assessment. You didn't learn safety from screens, you learned it by living. That's why when chaos hits, you don't freeze, you move. But there's a deeper layer most younger generations never experienced. You developed something called comfort with solitude. You spent hours alone, listening to music, thinking, exploring, not because you were lonely, but because nothing was constantly demanding your attention. Research on pre-digital childhood shows these adults feel far less anxious when alone with their thoughts. In fact, modern studies found people would rather experience mild electric shocks than sit quietly for 15 minutes. You'd probably laugh at that. You learned early that boredom isn't a crisis. Your brain never became dependent on constant stimulation. That's why silence doesn't scare you. Then there's analog patience. You waited a week for your favorite show. You waited days for photos to develop. You memorized phone numbers and hoped someone was home. Delayed gratification shaped your brain, and research confirms it leads to stronger impulse control, better relationships, and long-term success. Instant rewards never impressed you because you were trained to wait. And finally, the trait that connects everything, unsupervised autonomy. At 8 years old, you left the house with one rule: be back when the streetlights turn on. No GPS, no tracking, no constant check-ins. You explored far from home. You made decisions. You handled consequences. Psychology shows that children given real independence develop stronger internal motivation and judgment. Your parents weren't hovering friends. They were authority, and they trusted you. That trust rewired your brain for competence. So when you feel out of place today, remember this: you're not outdated. You're carrying abilities that are disappearing. What looks like emotional distance is self-reliance. What looks like silence is depth. What looks like patience is discipline. You survived a childhood that would shock modern parents, and it didn't harm you. It forged you. For a brief moment in history, childhood was free and formative, civilized and feral at the same time. If you grew up in the 70s, you didn't miss out. You experienced something irreplaceable. Drop a comment if you lived it. And if you value psychology-backed content that explains why you are the way you are, hit subscribe. We're just getting started.